Meanwhile, on the comic box. Bop-a-doo, bop-a-doo. Comics. I haven't done it that way in a while. I felt pretty good. Hey everyone, welcome to The Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. I am Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and we are doing something a little different this week. I am actually recording 2 episodes today just because of the 4th of July weekend that's coming up. So this episode is just me, and then when I normally record with Liam, that'll actually be the episode for next week, the Spider-Man prep episode. So because of that, I'm not going to do a weekly geekery. I'm going to dive into what was originally going to be an episode with Dr. Ray on Brian K. Vaughan comics and how a lot of them are turning into movies and TV shows and such. But he wasn't able to make it again this week. So I threw out to Twitter via our Twitter at ComicBoxCast and said, well, is there anything that you guys really want us to talk about this week? And I got a bunch of requests, but here's the thing. They're strictly from 2 people. They were from Void and Fletch. Just kept on sending me questions. And Void's like, well, I guess you have yourself a Q&A episode to do now. Here's 4 more questions. So what I did is I actually went back and rated the Q&A thread for the Geek to Geek podcast last November. And I figured this is a random episode because this is issue 50. Ooh, I have to look. Click, click, click. You're not hearing me click through my computer. This is... Yeah, I thought so. This is 54. So this is issue 54. I suppose it's been a while since we've just sat and talked about me. So in no particular order, this is what we're going to do. We're just going to run through a whole bunch of questions, let you guys know me a little bit better, I guess. And that's going to be it for this week. So it'll probably be a bit shorter, but hopefully fun. Before we get into it, though, this.
I'm Void.
And I'm Beej.
And together, we're the Geek to Geek podcast. Well, we make it. It is kind of us, but I guess it's separate.
Every week, we pick a topic from geek or digital culture and chat about it for a while.
And you're invited. We talk about books and movies, games, comics, the internet.
Or really whatever we feel like.
Yeah, that too.
So look for the Geek to Geek podcast on iTunes.
Or wherever your podcasts are sold. Or downloaded. Or whatever.
And we're back. Of course, that was a commercial for the Geek to Geek podcast. As we are part of the Geek to Geek podcast network, please go and give us a star rating and review on iTunes. It is a great way to spread word about the show. And since we don't spend money to advertise, it's the only way that word spreads about the show. I want to say that actually the Geek to Geek podcast was up on the new and upcoming list the other week. I feel like somebody posted that on Twitter. So that is very exciting, and congratulations to those guys. And let's move on. Maybe one day, right? The Comic Box? Who knows? There's a lot of comic book podcasts out there, but none of them have me in a weird revolving door of guest co-hosts. So, it's different. All right, let's get into these Q&As. This is, of course, again, in absolutely no particular order, starting at the top. Your childhood nostalgia item that hasn't been brought back yet, but you would love a new version of. And what does that version look like? Okay, I'm going to say nothing. I think a big part of nostalgia is that thing exists. And when you go back and watch an early episode of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the cartoon. It's not good, but you can still have strong nostalgia because there was all the pop culture, zeitgeist thing going on around it. But I wouldn't be like, oh, I really want to see it. Like, I guess I get the nostalgia thing. It's like seeing Superman fly on screen and you get the feeling the first time you watch Christopher Reeves on screen. So in that sense, I suppose I get it. But if things were made quality and not just to sell children toys, you'd be able to go back and watch that original thing and still feel nostalgic. So I'm not a huge fan of the reboots, sequels, prequels kind of thing. I like the idea of pushing forward. I do like what Marvel's doing, creating a universe. And I do get the nerd feels when I see Spider-Man pop up on screen again. But we'll talk a little bit about that next week in the episode with Liam, our prep episode. So I guess there's nothing that I loved as a kid that I would demand to be brought back. Like, I loved comics, and comics are still going, and I liked cartoons, I liked the Batman animated series and I liked X-Men just like everybody else, but I don't know that I'd want any of those to come back. So I would much rather see new things that are adaptations of things I loved as a kid. So there's still some nostalgia in there, them revisiting some of my favorite moments, but I wouldn't say it'd be a TV show or anything that I watched as a kid. It's more like I want to see what other comic book properties that they can bring to life. Follow-up question, what nostalgia things have been ruined for you because they were brought back? I don't know that this is really a thing either. I think it's important to be able to separate what's new from what's old. Like, I don't think the new Ghostbusters ruined the old Ghostbusters. I'm a fan of the Evil Dead movies. I watched the first season of Ash vs. Evil Dead. I haven't managed to see any of the new season. And while it's different and you're kind of like, well, I was hoping it'd be something, a little better than this. There was some good stuff in there, don't get me wrong. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's anything that's actually been ruined for me. I just say, oh, well, I liked the other one better. You can make 18 Rockies. There's still going to be the first Rocky movie. And my favorites being Rocky and Rocky Balboa, I think. But yeah, so I mean, I get that that's the way sort of how nostalgia works. There's one that just says follow-up topic, pontifications on the nature of nostalgia. Nostalgia it's the idea of making you feel young again, which is something that I can't speak for the world at large, but I think Americans in particular, and even like 20-year-olds already, like we're getting really old really fast in our own minds. And rather than looking forward to the things that we can do as we get older or experience as adults, is we're always looking to recapture our childhoods and not grow up. And I'm definitely one of those people. I feel like I grew up pretty quick in high school, and with like my dad passed away when I was 17, for example. So it was like there was responsibilities that I had to take on pretty quickly, but I still remained pretty much a stupid kid up until now in my 30s. I still read comics. I still like cartoons. So I guess that nostalgia is still there, but for me, it's just if you like a thing, like that thing, and it's not something you need to revisit later to feel nostalgic about. But I don't know. I mean, I guess every once in a while I'll want to go back and watch episodes of something I enjoyed as a kid. But usually it's things that I feel are still well done and were able to stand the test of time, like the Batman animated series. There's some things that are a little dated in there, but in general, the writing is still really good. So it's still something you can enjoy. Here's one from Fletch, I think. Man of Steel sequel might include Supergirl and Brainiac, but no Richard Pryor. This is Fletch's sense of humor. Thoughts? That's what CGI is for. CGI Richard Pryor in there. Go for it. Bringing Supergirl and Brainiac in. I like Brainiac as a villain. I guess it makes sense to have Supergirl in there. I wonder if they're going to do the story where they did an animated movie. Was it Public Enemies, maybe, where they sort of introduce Supergirl and I think Brainiac was the villain? That's fine with me. I guess, if it allows them to then make a spin-off Supergirl movie. I don't know why you would need her introduced because there's already the television show. But yeah, I don't know. I always liked Brainiac. The episodes of the Justice League, and I can't remember, I think it was just Justice League, not Justice League Unlimited, where Lex Luthor merges with Brainiac, which is something they did right at the end of the Silver Age of comics, or the Bronze Age, depending on how you look at it, right before Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it was considered one of the better stories, the Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, written by, I believe, Alan Moore, same guy that wrote From Hell and Watchmen and a million other stories that are held in incredibly high regard. So, cool. Great. Worst superhero secret identity occupation. This is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to say billionaire. I think it's very easy and sort of a cop-out. And while it makes sense, because then they're able to buy or design or whatever, get all of their superhero fighting equipment, their jets, and, Spider-Man's costume alone, the way they present it in the movies, is like, unless Tony Stark is giving it to you, yeah, you're going to be in a hoodie with goggles. But for some reason, I just didn't like the billionaire thing because it seems so easy. They're the superhero, so we get to focus on the superhero stories. And in the real life, I don't know, they're a billionaire, so none of this is an issue. And the fact that, like, Green Arrow is a dude with a bow and arrow, but he had to be a billionaire too. I don't know. I just like to see something different in there. Best use of the color brown. I know this is a joke. I'm going to say bringing diversity to comics. What? Social commentary. Next question. How many comics do you typically read in a week? This is really hard and also kind of a tricky question because I don't know if this runs into how many comics do I buy in a week. A lot of things that I like to read are trades. I like to get things from the library and from Hoopla. Sometimes it's not a lot. Sometimes it's a couple of comics that came out that week. There are a number that I follow from week to week, but they kind of slim down. Like I think Moon Knight just finished again. I know I said I was going to jump off, but they ended their run. And, Wonder Woman's ending its run. I think the numbering is going to continue, but it's going to have a different creative team. So I guess a handful. Like there's a Green Lantern comic every week now. So I probably read a couple every week. And then there's usually one trade that I try to read. And depending on how long it is, that can take me a week to a couple of weeks. It really depends how much time I find to get to it. What comic do you get the most excited for when a new issue comes out? Part of that actually comes down to this podcast. Even though I don't review comics week to week anymore, I like to be up to date on what's going on. So a lot of times it still feels like a job. Like, okay, new comics come out. I want to read them before the next comics come out. In general, I like the Injustice comic. It wasn't great for a long time, and they're doing the Injustice 2 comic, I think, now. And that's okay. It's also very short. It's a digital comic, so it takes less time to read. Beyond that, usually I would say Rat Queens I like reading right away. Boy, that's such a good question. I guess it depends what kind of mood I'm in, because the Green Lantern stuff is always sort of the standby that's always continuing on. I like books like Champions and Saga, but what do I actually jump on first? That is really tough. I don't know, because there's comics I love like Silver Surfer, but if I'm not in the mood to sit and read a very feel-good comic, I might read something else, and sometimes if I have the comics, I'll be like, well, I want to get through this, or I want to just keep working away on a trade that I'm reading. So I guess I don't have a really good answer for that. I mean, there's a lot of comics I really enjoy right now, or maybe that's actually a smaller number. Maybe a lot is hyperbole, but I don't know that there's one in particular that I'm like, oh man, I was super waiting for this. I just don't think right now there's a series that's that. Silver Surfer might be the closest, where I look forward to each issue because they're wonderful, but I'm not in a spot where I'm like, oh, you left me on that cliffhanger and I just need to know what's going on. I just don't know that there's a comic that's doing that for me right now. What is my all-time favorite run of a comic book? That's like asking somebody, which one's your favorite kid, Void? Well, let's face it, you probably have a favorite, but you're not allowed to say. Favorite run of a comic? I guess I want to say Peter David and Todd Knock on Young Justice. I also loved the Ron Mars and Daryl Banks run of Green Lantern. Of course, the Garth Ennis Punisher run, all of it from Marvel Knights through Marvel Max, the Max run, I really enjoyed. Boy, Quantum and Woody, I enjoy, but I guess I wouldn't put that as my all-time favorite run. I'm sure there's things I'm forgetting, and there's short runs that I really enjoy, like I enjoyed Scarlet, and I really loved Transmetropolitan. But if I'm going my entire life all-time favorite run, I'm probably going to give it to the Young Justice comic. That hurts to say, because I know that if I went and looked in the other room with my comic boxes, I would see something and just slap myself for not thinking about it or bringing it up. If you could pair one comic writer and one comic artist together, who would it be and why? Oh, that's really tough again. I'm not great with artists. I have some that I really enjoy. I like Mike Allred. I like Todd Knock, and I like Daryl Banks, Howard Porter from his JLA run. But a lot of that is just like, I liked those runs, Pretty much anybody Greg Rucka works with. I know Drink. I said Greg Rucka. He had so many artists on. Wasn't Lazarus. There was one comic where or like when he wrote Queen and Country, which I think was the first thing I ever read from him. And actually something I want to say I read in a college course. I don't remember what it was, but I had a teacher who loved comics. So when we had like our horror film class, we read Swamp Thing, But it was Queen and Country. It had revolving artists on it. Yeah, but I don't know. I would say if I wanted a writer that would do something, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to say Grant Morrison, because he is way crazy out there. And is it J.H. Williams III, who is the artist on Batwoman? Because you have a writer who loves to get big, bold, and trippy, and an artist who does these amazing 2-page spreads. I think that would be a match made in heaven. Ha! I had an answer to it after all. All right, so the rest of the questions I have on here are from the Geek to Geek podcast back in November, but I dove into the subreddit, reddit.com/r/geektogeekcast, and grabbed a couple of these. Favorite book or series? If we're not talking comics, my favorite book growing up was The Monster's Ring by Bruce Coville. I was a Bruce Coville fan growing up. Not so much Goosebumps. I was not an R.L. Stine guy. Sour Beach! As far as a series of books growing up, there was a series, and I don't know the author off the top of my head, but it was called The Extreme Zone. It was a series of short, young adult books that I think were probably meant more for a female audience than a male audience. But they jump back and forth between a male and protagonist and a female protagonist. And the reason I say I think it was meant a little more for women is they always talk about what the female lead looks like, is how she's not as pretty as people seem to say she is, or doesn't think she's as pretty as people say she is. And the male character is a little less defined, more of like his sandy blonde hair he has to brush out of his eyes and stuff like that. But it was very interesting in that it was three warring groups that are all trying to achieve the same sort of goals, which is like teleportation, but one does it through magic, one through science, and one through like biology, science experiments kind of thing. And it deals with, psychic abilities or whatever. So it really tapped into my love of sort of comic booky sci-fi things. And I always felt like it would be adapted really well into a television show. You couldn't call it The Extreme Zone, E-X-T with a big X, T-R-E-M-E zone. But that was probably my favorite book series growing up. Yeah. And it wasn't until I feel like I was out of college that I actually went online on Amazon and bought the final one book that I had never read. Music that I'm into, everything. I'm one of those guys that listen to music, and apparently this is a thing where when you listen to music in middle school, that's the music you're going to listen to for the rest of your life. You sort of pick your genres at that time as you're developing as a person. And so I was always into soundtracks because I would see a movie and I would associate that type of music with that part of the film. So as far as the CDs I own, they are mixes I made myself out of music my brothers had on their computers growing up. And then a lot of soundtracks. Beyond that, I guess if I had to throw out top artists, Billy Joel for sure, because I'm a piano player and I grew up actually learning how to play piano by playing Billy Joel music. I'm a big Tenacious D guy. I like the Blues Brothers a lot. I have I even have their live one where it was Jim Belushi taking over for John Belushi. It was really not that great of an album. But Briefcase Full of Blues I really like, and the first soundtrack. Boy, what other type of music am I into? I just kind of everything, but I feel like I mostly stick with alternative rock from the 90s is kind of where I live. Mac, Windows, or Linux? Windows. I prefer Windows. I have no experience with Linux. I have worked with Macs. I use a Mac for work. I don't mind it. I'm just happy that I finally can have a mouse with a right mouse button. That's pretty much it. Other podcast you like or would recommend? Obviously, The Adventure Zone. Everybody on our podcast network loves The Adventure Zone. And obviously, the other podcasts in our podcast network. Beyond that podcast I listen to, well, here, I'll just pull up my phone and I will run down the list because that is the way that we are doing this thing today. Okay, so podcasts I am subscribed to, and I'm going to skip over the ones that are part of the network, like Geektitude and the Geek Fitness Health Hacks. So I have the Adventure Zone Lore, the Black Tapes, which I'm not a huge fan of the writing, but I love the idea behind it. Snake Oil Comics, which is a bunch of guys in a comic shop giving each other crap. We Can Do This All Day has been discontinued. It was a podcast where they went episode by episode or movie by movie chronologically for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but they never finished the, I want to say, second season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's a podcast called The Vampire Historian, which is starting to get better. It is a professor down in Texas who just loves all things vampires, mostly the folklore, and he, holds horror conferences and he speaks on Dracula and Dracula through pop culture. And the quality of the podcast itself, like the audio quality, has started to get better. It wasn't that great starting out. And it's very academic, but I'm that kind of guy. I've bought several books off of his recommendation. The Writer's Block podcast, it's J.R. Havlin, the guy who used to be the head writer for The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. This has also been discontinued or put on hiatus. But while it was going, it was really cool because he was interviewing other late-night writers or comedy writers, which is sort of a dream job of mine that I don't expect I'll ever actually do, but it's still fun to fantasize about. Fat Man on Batman, Kevin Smith's Batman podcast that he hosts with Mark Bernardin, and Welcome to Night Vale. And then I have several other ones, that I'm not subscribed to, but that I listen to every once in a while when I'm able to jump on, like Two British Nerds, Sava, who was on our show way back in the day. I'm listening through the Tolkien Professor right now. I was doing it to prepare for the upcoming Tolkien convention that was going to be here in Minnesota, but the convention got canceled, so I'm kind of lost, it's a guy recording his lectures because he's a professor who teaches a Tolkien class. Should I just finish it out? And yes. So I don't know that I'll listen to all of it, but I'm enjoying that. And I guess that's it. That's a good list. How did you two meet and decide to do a podcast together? That was obviously for Void and Beej. I will say for Liam and I, this actually goes for just about everybody that has been on this podcast, from Liam to Fletch to Void to my wife. College. I met all of them in college. I was roommates with Void back in college. We worked at the TV station together. Liam was a writer and eventually co-host on the television show that I was head writer, producer, and host of. It was a comedy news program. I met my wife at the TV station there, the wife. I met there as well, was working at the TV station. Fletch also worked at the TV station. He hosted his own show. He hosted a trivia program, but he and I became really good friends because we lived in the producer's office together working on our shows at the same time. I hope that answers all of the questions. I've known everybody for years now. If you could meet any one person, alive or dead, fictional or real, who would it be and why? I have no idea. That would have to be a really long list. Not to get into any big topics, but Jesus? Probably. If we're assuming that we can all speak the same language, I think that would be a person you would want to talk to. Beyond that, it'd be really nice to hang out with Stan Lee as he is on his way. I don't want to say out the door. That's so dark. But Stan Lee is old. He's not doing conventions anymore. And I'm not the kind of guy to spend hundreds of dollars to wait in line to shake someone's hand. What's the most unusual thing either one of you believe? Conspiracy theories, ancient aliens, flying spaghetti monster. Is the hokey pokey really what it's all about? I love this question. When I was a kid, I used to believe in aliens because we all watched Unsolved Mysteries, and you could not watch that show and not come away thinking aliens are real. Every once in a while, I like watching documentaries about UFOs and stuff, but I don't believe that it's actual extraterrestrials coming down and visiting our planet. Beyond that, conspiracy theories. I think this isn't a thing I suppose I should say on tape, but I think when a lot of people talk about distrust of the government or what the government is listening to or doing, I do think there's some validity to that, not to the tinfoil hat level, but yes, I think that if they can listen to you and they can log information and data can be stored, I don't know that somebody is sitting there going through absolutely every bit of it. But yes, I think the technology exists now, and I find it hard to believe that nobody is taking advantage of the technology that exists. In general, I am somebody who trusts in humanity. I like people. I'm a very trusting person. Sometimes I guess I'm told too much so. But I still believe that there are people out there and technology out there where, yeah, I'm sure somebody's probably listening to your cell phone conversations, but I'm guessing they're listening to a particular, word or phrase or I don't know. You know what I mean? Yes, you're probably being spied on, but I don't think it's to the level of the security strip in your money is being read by airport metal detectors so they know how much you have on you and where you're going at all times. I'm not to that level. But beyond that, yeah, I'm pretty sure if somebody wanted to know literally anything about you, they could. And that's, I guess, as far as I go. Beyond, I suppose if this is, I don't know if it's unusual that I believe this. I think everybody at all times is trying to make money off of me. Anytime somebody comes to talk to you, I think you should always take everything they say with a grain of salt. Even if it's somebody that comes to your door wearing there was somebody who came to the door with a Minnesota nature whatever, and they wanted, me to sign a petition. And great, and I sat and I talked to him for a while, and I signed the thing. I didn't give him my email or any of that, but, the fact that somebody's wearing a T-shirt, my BS detector, I think, is always on, and that includes political stuff from both sides. Tell us something you think might be embarrassing. Let's get real. Something that's embarrassing about me. I don't know. I'm balding pretty hard. I buzz my hair now. It took a really long time for me to get comfortable doing that because while everybody else had spiky hair and was frosting their tips and stuff in high school, I had very thick hair that was always well combed, and I've had that same hair for my entire life. So this past year when I had to make the decision to shave it off, I made a video and put it on Facebook where I played the song Desperado and looked really, really sad while my wife shaved my head. And I put that out on Facebook Live. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't know that there's a whole lot that I'm embarrassed about. I'm not really a guy that deals with shame. You know, it's like, oh, we're going to a thing. Can I wear something stupid to put on a costume? I like embarrassing other people. So I guess that's it. I don't know. I think like a lot of comic book nerds, I got picked on a lot as a kid. It was not a time when you could wear a Spider-Man t-shirt. I still did, but it was not a time where you could wear a Spider-Man t-shirt to school and be considered part of the modern zeitgeist. Like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I went to see Spider-Man 2. That was sweet. Cool movie, bro. It was like, you're clearly a nerd. Oh, here's one. I used to listen to marching band music. I had a Walkman, and I didn't have any money to buy tapes of actual modern music. And my dad used to have tapes of random things like Halloween music, or he had a tape of Sousa marching band music just for the 4th of July. So there was like, I don't know, a couple of months or something where I was listening to marching band music because I liked the power behind it, and I didn't have anything else to listen to. So I guess that might be embarrassing. I had a marching band period. If you could eat one thing for the rest of your life and nutritional content wasn't a concern, what would it be? My wife's apple crisp with vanilla ice cream. Hot or cold, it doesn't matter. That's how I would mix it up. My wife actually enjoys cooking. It's totally not like a gender roles thing. And she is phenomenal at it. And just about everything she makes is delicious. But I thoroughly enjoy her apple crisp. I tried answering that one as fast as possible. There's so many things that I like eating, which you would know if you looked at me. Last question. If you could point to one geeky thing you wish more people knew about because you love it and or it's been a positive thing for you, what would it be? The television show Freaky Links. It was on Fox in 2000. Oh, I don't know now. Early 2000s? Was it 1999 into 2000 or 2000, 2001? It was by Haxan Films. It was the guys that made the Blair Witch Project. It starred Ethan Embry. It was not a great show. Some of the episodes, I think, still can hold their own. But it was early days of the internet. It was a television show about a guy who investigated weird paranormal or urban legend type of things in order to put it on his blog and make money off of like banner ads and t-shirt sales. You know, it was a skateboarder in his 20s, and the whole story is his twin brother ran a very dry website called occultresearch.com. Then something happened, and he ended up killing himself, committing suicide. So his twin brother, who is much more of the relaxed, laid-back guy, takes over the site, and so he and his buddies drive around the country looking for stories. And the whole pitch of the show is it was at a time when people were just starting to get used to the internet. You had the Blair Witch Project, which made so much money because of its digital marketing campaign. Before that was a thing, they put out a website saying, this film is real, this footage is real, what you're about to see actually happened. And that's how that movie, even though, depending on who you ask, it wasn't very good or very scary, made more money relatively. You know, it is the most profitable film because of the number of times it made its budget over in, I think, the history of cinema. So Freaky Links sort of took that idea as well, where freakylinks.com was the website, and the website actually existed and did not mention the television show at all. So during the show, you would see it would cut between regular TV cameras and their crappy little digital hand cameras, because super high def, cell phone video wasn't a thing at the time. And clips from their hand cameras, sometimes clips that weren't actually in the show, would be uploaded to their website along with the blog post detailing their adventure for that week. And then it was open for people to comment on, and you could get involved. And they created this backlog of like a year and a half or something like that of blog posts of stories that you would never see on the TV show. So it was this fully interactive television viewing experience, the likes of which I don't think exists anymore. There's things like when they did Fringe, where there were clues hidden throughout the whole thing, or Futurama where they have the alien language. There are things like that, but there's never been anything that I've seen where it was like, it takes the viral marketing and alternate reality game sort of things that are done now to promote movies, but turn it into the entire experience. And I thought that was cool. So the one geeky thing I wish people knew more about was the television show Freaky Links, which you can only get on bootleg today. You might be able to find episodes online. I don't know, because I own like 3 bootleg copies and an original script, and I was one of the like last 3 fans on the actual message board for the production company on this show, because I was one of those guys. So that's it. That is it for this week. I know that's a really short episode and very different from what we usually do, but come back next week. Liam and I are going to get together and we are going to talk Spider-Man Homecoming, give a preview, maybe a look at The Vulture. Otherwise, we're going to talk about why we keep having all these Spider-Man movies. And Liam has actually seen all of them, so it should be good. And then the week after that, Spider-Man review. So I hope you guys are getting your web shooters ready. Twip, twip. I don't know. You can hit me up on Twitter at ComicBoxCast. You can email us at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can come ask me more questions on our subreddit, reddit.com/r/geektogeekcast. Don't forget to head to geektogeekcast.com. Every week, you would think I would finally write this down. It doesn't matter. Come find me on Twitter if you have any other questions. I'm pretty much an open book. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Bow, bow, fop doof doof fountain dibba doo 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 wow down ba bop wow down ba bop wow Q&A session. Never mind. Liam just walked in the door. Hi, Liam. So I quickly set up, and I'm going to make Liam rapid fire answer these questions, and then we'll record our episode for next week. I already told them. I think I told them that I'm double recording tonight. Okay.
You told them with your mind or with your words?
I don't know.
Sometimes it's both.
Interpretive dance?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Some road flares and
so I'm not gonna
flags.
I'm not gonna run you through all of the same ones.
Okay.
But rapid fire questions, you don't get to think, you just have to answer. Your childhood nostalgia item that hasn't been brought back, has not been brought back yet.
Dino Riders. Don't even need you to finish that question.
The thing you want to come back.
Yes.
Dino Riders.
Dino Riders.
Okay. What has been brought back that ruined it for you because it was brought back?
Transformers.
Okay. I'm waiting for Blade Runner.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to ruin Blade Runner for me. That's just...
Okay.
It's too wonderful of a thing for me.
Okay.
But I liked the toys of Transformers. I liked the cartoons. Don't give a crap about these movies.
Gotcha. Man of Steel sequel might include Supergirl and Brainiac, but not Richard Pryor. Your thoughts?
I understand why it doesn't, but...
This is a Fletch question.
Yeah, maybe there should be just like a bronze statue of him standing there, like striking a pose.
Okay. The worst superhero secret identity occupation.
In theoretical or actual?
Let's go theoretical.
Okay. I think it would have to be police chief.
Okay. And actual?
Off
the top of your head, who do you think has the dumbest secret identity occupation?
Oof. I'm not a big fan of Superman's just being a reporter.
Okay. Best use of the color brown.
Ooh.
Also a Fletch question.
Brown.
Yeah, and I'm not going to tell you what my answers are. This is going to be good. You're going to have to listen.
Wolverine's original yellow and brown costume.
Okay, good answer. How many comics do you typically read in a week? I can answer this. None.
Typically.
What comic do you get the most excited for when a new issue comes out? You also don't read comics
on a regular
basis. But so say a trade or something comes out. What would you run out to buy?
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
There you go. What is your all-time favorite run on a comic book?
Ooh, I really loved the Age of Apocalypse storyline that they did in all the various X books in the 90s.
If you could pair one writer and one artist together on a dream project, who would they be?
Kevin Smith and Alex Ross.
That's a really good answer. Wow. Okay. And so those were the comic book questions. Here's a couple of the random ones. What is your favorite book or favorite book series?
I liked Scud quite a bit. I think that was my.
Well, that's a comic question. How about real books?
Real book.
Yeah.
Real books. A series. Okay.
Or just your favorite book.
Oh, okay. Well, I really like Ready Player One right now.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah.
What kind of music are you into?
Pink Floyd, man.
Yeah, that's Mac, Windows, or Linux?
What's a Linux?
Okay. What other podcasts do you like or would you recommend to people?
We Hate Movies. It's a movie podcast about bad movies, and they're all very funny. There's 300 some episodes, and it's a good time.
Let's see. The next one is How Did We Meet? I already explained that one. If you could meet any person, alive or dead, fictional or real. Oh, dude, I totally missed the fictional part. Shoot. Anyway, who would it be and why? If you could meet one person. I totally spaced on the fictional. I would have so gone deep into comic lore.
I would meet Rick Deckard.
Okay.
And I would prove that he's a human.
And not a... Okay. Tell us something... No. Okay. Most unusual thing that you actually believe in, like a conspiracy theory or the existence of aliens or something. Is there anything you actually believe that's considered outside the norm?
Well, JFK assassination, but I don't think that it's really too out there by modern standards.
What do you mean? Just that it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald? Or
Yeah.
that it was, but
that there was a government conspiracy
Okay.
possibly involving the mafia. Not going to say that it didn't.
Okay. Have you read books on this, or is this just a general gut feeling?
Gut feeling and internet
Yeah.
articles.
Okay.
And talking to people,
Yeah.
Like with strong coffee
Sure.
late at night.
Yeah. In your
Smoking
Pink Floyd
cigarettes.
t-shirts. Tell us something that you think would be embarrassing. Tell us something embarrassing about you.
About me?
That's right. You're opening up to our
I
audience.
almost trusted a fart yesterday, and if I did, it would have been a bad time. I've been drinking a lot of
All
water
right,
and
nope,
not eating a lot of
that's
food,
good enough.
so-
Okay. If you could eat one thing for the rest of your life, and nutritional content was not a concern, what would it be?
Chocolate.
Okay. Last thing, one geeky thing you feel a lot of people don't know enough about that that you absolutely love and want to make sure people know about.
The Arthurian legend.
Okay. That's it. That was it. That was the completion. Thank you for spamming that. I didn't do an episode completely alone.
All right.
All right. Now we're going to go and record our Spider-Man prep episode, which you guys have to wait an entire week to listen to because we're cruel. Maybe I'll release it a little early because it's the 4th of July weekend.
Ooh,
and if you're traveling, you got something to listen
early
to.
release.
That's right. All right. See you next week.